Welcome, everyone. Really nice to see you tonight. Thanks for joining us. My name is Amy Miller, and I'm the Executive Director of Louisville Literary Arts. And I'm so excited that Farrah Alexander has joined us tonight for an interview about her new book, Raising the Resistance, A Mother's Guide to Practical Activism. I'm going to introduce her in just a minute. I just wanted to sort of let you know what the flow is going to be. Farrah's going to read a short excerpt from her book, and then I have some prepared questions to ask her, and then I'll open it up to everyone who's here. If you want to ask a question, you can either unmute yourself or ask the question in the chat, and I will answer it. And I also, well, I think I'll do this in a little bit. I'm going to make sure that you have the link to Carmichael so you can purchase Farrah's book from an indie bookseller here in Louisville. And then I'm at an age where I forget things like as soon as they leave my mouth. So forgive me if I've already said this, but I'm recording this and putting it on our YouTube channel, which I will link on all social media and on our Louisville Literary Arts website. So if you miss anything, you have to run to the bathroom or something, we have you covered. Okay. So Farrah Alexander is a writer whose work focuses on feminism, parenting, social justice, politics, and current events. Her work has been featured in Huffington Post, Bust, and Scary Mommy. I love Bust. Her commentary has been discussed in Scientific American, BuzzFeed, Refinery 29, Yahoo, Hello Giggles, Woke Sloth, oh my God, I want to know what that is, Cosmopolitan, Elle, Paris Hilton, Daily Mail, BBC, and others. Phew, that's a list. Raising the Resistance, A Mother's Guide to Practical Activism is her debut book. She's a member of Everytown's Author Council, which was designed to harness the power of the literary community to amplify the gun safety movement. She is a Jeremiah Fellow with Bend the Arc, a Jewish Partnership for Justice, along with a cohort of young progressive Jews dedicated to fighting white supremacy, anti-Semitism, and injustice. Farrah holds a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science from Indiana University. She lives outside of Louisville, Kentucky with her husband, son, and daughter. Welcome, Farrah Alexander.
Thank you so much, Amy. I am delighted to be here, and thank you, everyone, for being here with us and spending this evening with us.
So I want to just tell you guys what our community norms are. I want to make sure that everyone is comfortable and also feels welcome. So first, that we're all mindful of how our words impact others. Second, that we are respectful, considerate, and collaborative to all in attendance. And third, that we are supportive and compassionate towards others who may not share our opinions and values. So thank you for listening. And without further ado, Farrah, do you have something that you'd like to read?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am going to read a little passage of my book, Raising the Resistance, right now. And here we go. So mothers are in a unique position to change the present to affect the future. The resistance against bigotry, misogyny, and injustice is largely being led by women, especially mothers. Activists are out there pushing strollers as they protest or registering voters with babies on their hip. We not only have the heart for activism, we are raising the future. If we want to live in a world without the hatred and bigotry we see now, we need to teach our children about love and equality. What is so cool about being a mom and raising these little humans is that their world is whatever we make it. If we believe anything other than treating human beings with respect, dignity, and fairness is wrong, then we must teach them that so it becomes their truth. If we want to make the future a kinder, more just place for our children to grow, we need to do everything in our power to make it so. Whether it's managing your family's busy schedule between school assignments and extracurricular activities, or excelling in your career and still helping with your kids' homework, moms get it done. Might as well throw in defeating bigotry and saving the world while we're at it. Amy, you're on mute.
Sorry. What is that from your preface?
It is. It's from the introduction.
It does. Okay, great. So, I'm sorry if you can hear my dog in the background. This is life in the pandemic, guys. Okay. So I was curious if you could tell us a little bit about the genesis of Raising the Resistance. How did the idea for the book come to be? Did it grow naturally out of some of the articles that you were writing for magazines and newspapers, or did the idea come to you and you worked on a book proposal first?
Mhm. Well, I had noticed after the election of 2016, there was pretty much immediately a resistance movement emerging. And I had noticed that that movement was being led by women and especially mothers. Like, for example, the Women's March, which I really view as like the catalyst for so much of this change. 3 out of 4 of the original co-chairs of the Women March are mothers. And it just absolutely amazed me, considering how overwhelmed I was feeling in the moment, to see these women who inspired me so much, who were able to balance motherhood and activism. And at the same time, I was seeing women and mothers who were being engaged in political activism for the first time, people who had never talked about who they voted for in the presidential elections were suddenly protesting in the streets. It was a huge change. And so I saw a need for mothers who either wanted to dip their toes into the world of political activism or wanted to deepen their involvement. And so I wrote that book for them.
That's great.
Mm.
So I know that we were talking a little bit beforehand. You said that you hadn't taken your kids to a protest before, but you wanted to talk about that.
Yeah, it did. So this is a very unique situation right now because we have a pandemic where it's not necessarily safe to be around large groups of people, although the protests have been incredibly safe in that regard and has not led to the spread of coronavirus due to social distancing and wearing masks. But here in Louisville, it has been extremely lively as people are demanding justice for Breonna Taylor, and then to see that justice be denied. And it has been quite violent and not always safe. But I have to say that the violence has been at the cause of LMPD and our police force. And it has been extremely unpredictable. You know, but one of the first big protests I went to was the Women's March, which was a largely white audience. And I very vividly remember getting high fives from the police force. And to go from that to going to a protest in the place I've lived my entire life, and I don't know when tear gas and rubber bullets are going to be deployed. And the people who have been tear gassed and arrested, many times that has been completely unprovoked and they have been peaceful protesters. So there's a lot of instability that unfortunately I don't feel comfortable bringing my children to.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Personally, we have been very choosy about where we protest, and have chosen more isolated protests. And I just recently read an article about people who were doing solo protests. Have you
Yeah,
heard about that?
I have not, but that's nice.
I love that, just standing outside their house with a sign for a couple hours. I think that's wonderful.
It is wonderful. It's wonderful. I think that it's a good time for anyone to make a stand and declare how they feel, however they're able to right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
So one of the things I really love about your book is how funny it is. Um, did you intentionally set out to write a funny book, or did it evolve from your just naturally funny voice?
Oh, thank you. Well, I am so glad that you brought that up because I think one of the big misconceptions about this book, because it does deal with some pretty heavy topics, is that it is very serious and very somber, and it really isn't. And I think naturally, that is my voice. I'm a snarky person, and that comes out in my writing a lot. And that has always come out in the articles that I've written, and people responded to that really well. But I also think that you just need that balance when you are talking about really serious subjects, that you need to laugh a little bit too. And that's just necessary, I think.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I think that's why John Oliver is so popular and all the late night shows. It's a little easier to take the the hard news when you know that there's going to be laughter around the corner.
Yes, absolutely. That's what I think.
Yeah. So, one of the sections of your book that I thought was really great was where you establish ideas around consent by acknowledging how young children deserve respect. And it made me think about my own childhood and having like great aunts and uncles over to the house who would actually corner me because I didn't want to be hugged and kissed, and then I'd get my cheeks pinched,
Um,
and then it was my father always saying, "Go hug your aunt, go kiss your uncle." And you have just such a great section on that. Um, can you talk about that section a little bit and how you approach the topic of consent?
Absolutely. So, um, you know, in my general parenting philosophy, I just like to keep in mind that we're raising future adults. And so I think a lot of times it's just paradoxical. If you tell a child you must hug your aunt and then you expect them when they go off to college to be able to deal with some really difficult situations with an intimate partner, for example. um, if you don't teach your children that, then I don't think they'll be able to recognize necessarily when they're in a really toxic situation or a dangerous situation. And so I think it's very important to start from the very beginning and say, hey, your body is your body, and I respect that. And you have boundaries, and you know what those boundaries are. If you don't want to kiss or hug someone, that's okay. And that's something that I work with. And it's kind of like a constant challenge. Like, for one, I talked about how I let my daughter, who has many opinions about fashion, dress herself. So I won't necessarily, I'll pick out a cute little outfit for her to wear, and she doesn't want to wear it. She wants to wear her own thing. And I'm like, you know what? In the grand scheme of things, what's more important, that I respected her choices and that her body is her body, or that I got a cute picture with exactly what I wanted her to wear, So,
And can you share with us some of her fashion choices?
ooh, of course. So,
Yeah, like she does what
yeah, Daniel. Um,
the time when
yeah, there you go. So she likes sparkles. That's kind of her big thing. So she likes graphic tees with all kinds of Shopkins and silly things, and lots of sparkles and bright colors and all of those things. That's
That's
kind of
awesome.
her style.
are you squishing my hands?
I love that. My daughter once spent an entire day in fairy wings, no matter where she went.
Love it. And what a special time, because right now, I'm in my 30s, and if I do that and go to Target, it's frowned upon. So
I mean, I think you should try it.
yeah, I would like to. But when you're 5 years old, it's like you want to wear fairy wings. Go for it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So one of the great things you talk about in your book is your involvement with several um, of the organizations that you are involved in. And I liked your strategy about if you don't know who to get involved with, just pick three. Three is a good number for that. And I was curious how you came to be involved with both the Everytown Authors Council and Bend the Arc.
Yeah. Okay. So with Everytown, gun violence is one of my big issues. And part of that is just because it affects so many people. You know, in this country, we lose about 100 Americans per day just from gun violence. And that really alarmed me. And, you know, in the age of coronavirus, that maybe doesn't sound so dire, but it is and certainly has been over the years. And that's also, it's just something that affects everyone and does not discriminate and is a very, very serious and uniquely American problem that I just care about. And so I really like Everytown and Moms Demand Action. I like what they stand for. They haven't been afraid to say, for example, that police violence is gun violence. And that's something that they need to tackle. And they look at all facets of gun violence. And Shannon Watts is someone that I greatly admire. I just absolutely adore her. And I think she's an incredible example of a mom who cared about something and took a stand and made an incredible impact. She was a stay-at-home mom who was folding laundry and was bothered by Sandy Hook. And now she runs an organization that outnumbers and is much bigger than the NRA. Like, that is absolutely incredible. And so I was very inspired by her and wanted to associate myself with their mission and support them. And Bend the Arc was another organization I just really care about. Out of my personal 3 issues, one is gun violence, and the other is white supremacy. I'm very concerned about white supremacy. And also, as a Jew, that's something that affects me and my family directly. And so it's a very personal issue and something that I really care about and am very concerned about as of late, because we've definitely seen a rise in white supremacy and anti-Semitism. And so I became involved in Bend the Arc because it's an organization that I've been following for a few years and really love their mission. And they wanted to get involved in the Louisville area. And so I became involved with them for the first time this year. And I love it. They're wonderful.
What kind of work does Bend the Arc do on a community level?
Well, what's kind of great is that they leave it open a lot, just to the people who are involved. And so we have I just described them before we all got together as like a small but mighty group, because we're really emerging. But we do have a nice group in this area. And for example, after the killing of Breonna Taylor, we in May, we went to her apartment for a memorial. And after that, we became involved, like, to our own individual comfort level, because this is a difficult situation with the pandemic, and people have unique needs, whether or not they're able to physically protest. But we did, for example, produce a zine about defunding the police, and we did that in a very Jewish way. And so we incorporated some ideas of, you know, justice, justice, you shall pursue, and talked about some of the police brutality in response to protesting police brutality and some of those things. And I'm really proud of it. So that's one thing that we did here in the Louisville area just this past summer. And we're looking to get more involved and be around.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. mom to mom, how do you find time to write
Mhm.
and be an activist while being a mom?
Yes. So here's the big secret. I don't have time. No one has time. So that's really what you need to know. And that is kind of what I've heard from other authors and other activists is that they say, I don't have time for this, but I have to do it. And that's kind of how I feel. I feel compelled to write and I feel compelled to take a stand. And so how I do that is just in the edges of the day and whenever I am able. Right now I have a little desk in my children's playroom. So I march over Legos to get to my laptop and I write, when they're in preschool or I get constantly interrupted. I read a Washington Post article about working at home and heard that children interrupt you on average, like about every 3.5 minutes. And that seems pretty on par. I think that's pretty good. So I've that's how I do it. I just, whenever I can, whether it's late nights, also my mother and mother-in-law would pick them up occasionally after school and keep them. And then that's when I would write. So it's things like that. There's no big secret, unfortunately.
I was wondering if it was any different for you.
No, it's not.
So I'm curious, just from a writing perspective, how did you go about writing the book? Like, what was your process for writing it? If there are other writers here, I'm sure everybody's interested in how you put it together. I know everybody's process is individual to them, but I'm wondering if you could give us a little taste of how you did it.
Yeah. Well, this was my first book. This is the first time I've written a book, and I'm used to writing much smaller bits. I write articles, and usually with tight deadlines and immediately published. And so this was very, very different to work on a very big project that I wouldn't see for over a year. It was kind of difficult to wrap my head around sometimes, but it's something that I've always wanted to do. This was a lifelong dream of mine to write and publish a book. And I really just kind of sat with that dream a little bit and thought about how I can make this a reality. And so I researched getting an agent and going the whole traditional publishing route. And my agent has been absolutely fantastic and fundamental in walking me through the process a little bit and outlining everything. And so from there, I just kind of broke it up from the outline and tackled it kind of chapter by chapter, piece by piece, and eventually I had a book.
So did you have any of it written when you presented it to your agent?
Um, yes, but it was different than what we have now. So I had just a bit of it. So if anyone isn't totally familiar with the nonfiction proposal process, when you go to pursue a contract with a traditional publisher for a nonfiction project, you are not presenting a book that you have already written. It's usually just a snippet of the book and a proposal, which is basically a business plan for the book. And so when I had presented it to my agent, I had an introduction and a sample chapter and then an outline of what I thought the book would be. And that was it.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Oh, great.
So what are you working on anything right now or your next project?
Yes, I am.
Oh, what is it?
I'm pretty excited about my next project because it's going to be very similar in a lot of ways to Raising the Resistance, because it's going to be about political activism and civil rights, but it's going to be focused on Kentucky. And so I'm very excited about that because we have some fascinating activists, past and present, in Kentucky, and I'm just really excited to tell their stories.
Oh, how cool. So can you tell us a little bit about who might be in this?
Who might be in this? I will tell you one person who I really am looking forward to profile, and that is Anne Braden. I think that she is a fascinating person to consider right now, because if you're not familiar with Anne Braden, she was a white woman who took a stand for racial justice in the 50s and 60s. And she made tremendous sacrifices and got a lot of pushback. And what I find fascinating is that today we have so many amazing Black women advocating for social justice and against racial injustice. And I had noticed that they talk about Anne Braden so much like a personal hero. And I just really, really find that fascinating right now in a time that we have so much division and tension. And I just find it fascinating to look back in history and see how other white allies took a stand and use that example. Personally, I find that really inspirational.
Yeah, that's great. Her story is so important to tell. I'm glad that you're covering her. I'm going to put a link to your book in the chat where people can purchase it from Carmichael's, and I want to open up questions from the audience. Does anyone have a question? You can just unmute yourself, or you can use the chat if you'd prefer. Either is fine. Questions about writing, questions about the book, about activism.
Any questions? Don't be shy.
Yeah.
Hi, I saw you on Instagram and I was really interested about your book because of the title. And we're always been a pretty open-minded, progressive household, but my daughter's 11, and during this time she got on TikTok, and we're pretty open, but she's very progressive, which I'm glad, but I'm actually kind of concerned the other extreme, like balance, because there's, and like, you know, we don't like Trump, but like she really doesn't like Trump. Like she has some extreme views at a young age that I'm almost like, okay, let's slow down a little bit. You know, like I'm feeling like these kids are like going to be anarchists by the time they're 18. Like, I don't know, you know, so I'm curious, like I'm really interested in raising, I like that, raising the resistance, but also I think balance is important too. And like at a young age, they have these strong emotions. They're going through changes, like how to balance that out so they can be effective. Because I think if they let their emotions kind of overwhelm them when they're so young, it can be hard for them to actually, you know, be part of the change. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. It's so nice to meet you, Becky. Thanks for coming tonight.
Oh, sure.
And I appreciate that question. Yeah, that's interesting. I have definitely noticed, like Gen Z, we talk a lot about, have so much passion. They're so, it's incredible. And so part of that is really inspiring and amazing, but I can understand how as a mother, that would be a little bit overwhelming and scary. So I think one, you should just be a little open-minded. Sometimes a lot of radical ideas, I personally think, sound crazy at first. And then I just think about critically, and sometimes I end up adopting them. You know, for example, defunding the police. When I first heard that, I thought, oh no, no, we can't do that. And then I started reading more and thinking critically about it and researching. And then I thought, yeah, okay, defund the police. That is what we need to do. We have some problems that we need to tackle. And so that has been kind of my personal evolution. And so sometimes I think we can really learn a lot from these passionate, really young people who sometimes have some really sounds like out there ideas. But at the same time, you definitely, as a mother, need to keep your children safe and be aware of the ideas and media that we're consuming, because on the flip side, we do have young people who are taking on conspiracy theories and some really dangerous ideas like anti-Semitism. And I'm not suggesting at all that that is what your daughter is into, but when you go on either side of the spectrum and either extreme, you're going to run into some dangerous ideas. And so, of course, I don't want to scare you, but it's just important to see exactly what she is consuming and talk to her about it, and just have an open mind and think critically, but be aware and have conversations and see how she feels and why she has come to the conclusions that she has as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I do. I feel it's necessary to check the sources for sure.
Mhm.
That's an important conversation to have, and I think an appropriate one for teenagers. There's so much media, and I know that is a problem on platforms like TikTok. I just heard today on the Daily podcast or something like that about coronavirus conspiracy theories and misinformation on TikTok specifically, and how they're trying to tackle that. So I know that that can definitely be a problem. So it may be an appropriate time to talk about, true fake news and some of the political extremes, and just ways to be safe, ways to consume information safely.
Yeah.
Difficult.
She actually did a defund the police puppet show for a tag camp for JCPS. Yes. And I was wondering, what is this? But it was actually pretty persuasive. It was good. So, anyway, thank you. Thanks for answering my question.
You're so welcome.
So it looks like a Mr. Patrick Alexander has a question for you.
So for anyone who doesn't know, Patrick Alexander is my husband. And he asked about research surrounding Mr. Ryan Reynolds. So, and if I could tell more about that research. So I had mentioned, and he's brought this up a few times, so I apologize if you are witnessing a marital spat right now. He's mentioned a few times that I referenced shirtless photos of Ryan Reynolds. Did you find it, Amy? What did I say?
Yep.
What did I say, Amy?
I mean, you're talking about toxic masculinity. Mostly I see John Wayne on the page. I'm not seeing any Ryan Reynolds here. Did you check your sources, Mr. Alexander?
Yeah, maybe I didn't say it at all. Yeah.
Oh, he's on the next page. He's on the next page.
Oh yeah, he referenced exactly the page number. I should have, let's see, 161. What did I say? About, oh yes. Oh yeah. Yeah, about alpha male stuff. Yeah. And I said specifically, when I looked up modern examples of an alpha male, I found a slideshow of actor Ryan Reynolds. In one pic, he stares intensely into the camera. In another, his jacket is agape, exposing his chiseled chest. In another, he's sporting a beard and a suit. I looked at all of them, for research. I'm just so offended. But yeah, no one is as handsome as my husband. This was just for research. I was just Googled alpha male and that's what came up, and I can't control Google. That's where I'm at with that.
That's great. Any other questions? I'm curious if your kids understand what you're writing about. Do you have political conversations with them? They're pretty young, right?
You're quite young. Yeah. So my oldest is about to turn 8 and my youngest is just 5. So it's pretty early for some political conversations, but it does come up. And they do know a little bit about what I write about. They're also not that interested. They keep me very humble. I they watched me write this book. As I said, I have to march over Legos to get to my laptop. And so it was often like, hey, mommy's writing a book and I'm on a deadline and I'm, typing away. And they're like, I don't care. I want to play ponies. Get off your computer. They don't care that much. But it definitely has come up, and it came up a lot when I ran for a small political office. So just a couple years ago, I ran for a political office and I wrote about it in the book because I lost by a lot. Like it was bad. But they had that experience of watching their mom run for a political office. And so that was kind of a good introduction because I was running for an office where I wanted to do things like improve the playgrounds and things like that they could see. And so it wasn't incredibly partisan. It wasn't very divisive, but it was something that they could definitely understand. They were like, what are you doing? I said, I want to win this election so I can fix the broken swings at the playground. And they're like, I've seen those broken swings. Now I understand that behind those broken swings is bureaucracy, and you want to enter that realm so you can fix the broken swings. And so it was kind of a nice introduction. And lately, the past several months, I've been involved locally, of course, in the aftermath of the death of Breonna Taylor, in supporting the Black Lives Matter movement however I can. And one of the ways that I've been able to contribute in a small way is to collect books. A Black Lives Matter leader said that Black children in the area need books. And especially while the schools and libraries are closed, they need books in which they see themselves represented and have empowering messages. And so I just started collecting books, and we got a bunch of them, which was really exciting. And then we started a new program called the Little Black Library in Louisville. And so they've watched me collect books, and they're pretty familiar with that process now. And they're like, yeah, Black Lives Matter. We're getting books for children who need them, and it's awesome. So
if anybody was interested in learning more about that program, where we find information?
Yes. So the Little Black Library is a relatively new program that was started by a Harvard MBA student who is incredible. And I believe the website is littleblacklibrary.com. If not, just please Google it. But it is a wonderful program. And like I said, the person who founded it is brilliant. And I look forward to seeing where it goes, but I'm very happy to have it in Louisville.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great. Valerie has a question. It says, what advice do you have for someone who feels fairly politically homeless in today's climate, but still wants to be active and heard?
Oh, wonderful. Hi, Valerie. Thank you so much for coming. Valerie is my sister-in-law, and that is my beautiful niece, Piper. Thank you for joining, Piper. It's good to see you. Yeah, so that can be really difficult right now, but I have been really inspired by seeing people who are perhaps Republican or conservative who have decided to take a stance that is a little bit uncomfortable for them. And so if you don't necessarily associate with a political party, that's fine. It doesn't really matter. I think a lot of people who are active in, for example, like the Black Lives Matter movement in Louisville, don't necessarily associate with a political party. A lot of the people who I have worked with and protested with are much more left than I am, for example. And you know, we all still just work together, and we can find common ground and whatever that we really care about, and that's what matters most. So if you want to be active and heard, then get active and be heard. You know, I think that everybody has a voice, and their voices deserve to be heard. So I would just like latch on to those issues that you really care about and advocate for those issues. And it doesn't matter what your political affiliation is. If you care about an issue, then you should just advocate for it. Yeah.
Great. That's good advice.
Thanks.
Well, any last questions before we wrap up? Oh, I think your mom has a question.
My mother.
With so many serious issues happening today, do your children express concerns or worries?
Of course they do. Yeah, so I keep going back to say this is a really, really unique time. And I say that because I don't think this can be understated. And it's such a wild time that I think for so many of us, it's already been normalized, and we have kind of found our own new normal. And sometimes we just need to be reminded this is a crazy, crazy time. And we are all right now just kind of like living through a collective trauma that we are never going to forget. And sometimes we just need to recognize that. And for children, I think it's especially hard, even though I see personally with my children, and I think most children, they're incredibly strong, incredibly resilient. And it's really just kind of amazing. Sometimes it's just amazing to see kids, just how strong they can be and how they bounce back and persevere through difficult situations. But yeah, I've definitely been mindful of what a difficult time it is for children, and especially my children, because I'm their mother and I love them more than anything. So yeah, they do express some concerns and worries, especially because children can pick up on difficult situations. And I keep going back to the situation we have in Louisville, because that's another very difficult situation where things have been incredibly tense. And I think that children can pick up on that. And so they have expressed concerns and worries in general and about specific issues that have come up. And, you know, I'm really no expert on it, but what I've chosen to do is just to be honest and explain things in a way that I think they can understand. And, you know, children are amazing. I've been amazed by how much they are able to understand and deal with. But yeah, just like we're all stressed out and worried and overwhelmed right now, children are too. And unfortunately, my children are no exception. And as their mother, I'm just doing my best to hold their little hands and get through it together.
That's good advice. You mentioned in your books, there's a section where, you know, we all hear about putting the oxygen mask on first, you know, and you address self-care in such a warm and compassionate way. I'm wondering if we could end with some things that you do to take care of yourself.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. Yeah, that's great. That's important. So I think self-care is incredibly important, and now more than ever, because we are all, as I said, going through a collective trauma that is incredibly difficult, and we have our own unique struggles that we're trying to get through. So I have a lot of really silly things that I do to practice self-care. I did address in my book that self-care is not just, bubble baths and kind of silly things to get through. It's also a lot of hard work and self-reflection. And so I try to do that as well. But also, I think 2020 is a time to be kind to yourself and not always a time for really hard, interceptive work. So, some of the silly things that I do, during the pandemic, have discovered 90-Day Fiance, which is, oh, Amy is not familiar. Wow. It is incredible. It is the most ridiculous show on television. Um, and it's all on Hulu, and you can watch hours and hours of 90-Day Fiance and see all these ridiculous love stories. And it is absurd, and it's just like junk food for your brain. And I really enjoy it. I love it. So if the kids are asleep and it's time for me to watch some TV, I watch 90-Day Fiance, take a bath. Some of those kind of silly things I do actually really enjoy, even though it's taxing, engaging in political activism. It makes me feel better to get out there and be around like-minded people and fight to make a difference. That is self-care for me. And so I love to do that. And of course, spend time with my children. And definitely during the pandemic, another thing that I've done that I haven't done before as much is spending a lot of time outside. I'm pretty much just like a living house plant. And as a writer, I, kind of get into a mode where I'm just going to stay in my corner and stare at a screen for hours and hours. And just the other day, my 5-year-old daughter said, "You need sunshine. Let's go outside. Let's swing." I've been mindful of that, and going outside more, exercising. My family and I have been going to state parks, which is pandemic friendly, and we can spend time together as a family and be outside and see new things. And it's been challenging, physically challenging, and I've found that I actually really enjoy that. So yeah, all those things have been very helpful in ways I've practiced self-care.
Well, thank you so much for being with us tonight. I really have enjoyed talking to you. I love your book.
Thank you.
I can't wait to see what your new book's going to be. I think it sounds wonderful.
Thank you so much, Amy. It has been an absolute pleasure. And thank you all for coming and spending your evening with us. I appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, Amy.
Have a good night. Remember to vote.
Absolutely, please.